Hi everybody, welcome to Phoenix Live. So today is Freedom Day, and it's a very big day in the sense that people are rising up and they're banding together in order to express their need for their freedoms to be respected and upheld. Because in case you haven't been paying attention the last half a year or a few months, a lot of our freedoms have been taken away and completely overlooked, it seems, as if they never even existed in the first place. And some of you might be aware of the difference between a privilege and a right. Privileges are bestowed upon you, and they can be taken away, whereas rights are God-given. You're born with them, and they shouldn't be able to be transgressed upon or taken away. Not the same as a privilege. And yet, there seems to be this assumption that our governments are operating on, where they're just treating it as if your privileges are the same as your rights are the same as your privileges. They can just be evoked overnight, like a thief in the night. They can just be taken away without due process, without sufficient evidence or grounds to justify the taking or the removal of your rights. So naturally, a lot of people are angry about this and very upset. It's affecting a lot of lives. Even if you look at the suicide figures, there's a lot more people being affected by the mythology of COVID-84 as opposed to, I would say, the actual death toll attributed to the genuine cause of COVID-84. Okay, and a lot of people are also aware of this. They're aware of the fear-mongering, the gross distortion of facts, and invention of data, which governments are using to justify removing your rights, which in itself is an unjustifiable thing to do, really. So everyone's banded together today to express vehemently their stance against the government, especially in Victoria. They're now in stage 4 lockdowns, and it's getting pretty totalitarianistic, pretty fascistic over there. And it does get to the point where you can only sit down and not do anything for so long. You can only sit down and tolerate so much before you feel this need just to get out there and do something. Just do something. Take some kind of affirmative action. And I understand that. Like, I too am in that space where it's like, constantly trying to figure out, like, what can we do? We need to do something. But by no means does this mean that I'm just going to go out there willy-nilly without properly thinking about it and properly outlining a plan and just do something. Just do anything. Just for the sake of doing something. Just so I can pat myself on the back and be like, well, I tried. I went up there and I kicked that police officer in the balls. Or I went up there and I did my march and I held my picket sign and I shouted with my comrades. It's like, yeah, sure, you're doing something. And it's coming from that place of rejecting fascism, which is ultimately what we're feeling and what we want to achieve, is just to reject this movement that's really consuming our freedoms, right? But just because you're going in there with an intention, and just because you're doing something, it doesn't mean you are actually helping anyone or anything. It doesn't mean you're helping your cause, and it could actually mean that you're helping to advance theirs. Okay, and that's what people, I think, get consumed in, and they forget. They forget that, despite your intentions, and as just as they are, as understandable as they are, despite your intentions, how you express those intentions matters more. And sometimes how we express these intentions, it might actually, in a cause and effect way, create circumstances and lead to outcomes and consequences and ramifications that actually are going against our intention. So, for those that have listened to me talk about this before, you would understand that I am against physically banding together with your signs and shouting at the step of Parliament or White House or wherever it is. And it's not that I'm against affirmative action. It's quite literally the opposite. I mean, sure, it's affirmative action, because when we band together and we protest, you're affirming your stance, you're affirming your position, you're shouting this message of truth to you. But in terms of actually affirming the outcomes we want, in terms of getting the result we want, I think it's actually going against us. I think it's actually regressing the cause on our side. Okay? Because regardless of our intention, if you're banding together physically and, literally violating various laws that have been put in place and, following through with disruption, social disruption, all that's going to happen is these people are going to record, distort, and report these events. And even furthermore, they will incite these protests. They might even be the ones organizing these protests. They will plant people that will into these protests that will literally incite violence, chaos, vandalism, theft. Okay? And then that can be recorded. It probably wouldn't even need to be distorted. But even if nothing happens, even if it was a peaceful protest, they can record it, they can distort it, and then they can report it on the news when they say, yes, tensions were very high last weekend when everybody banded together. There was 40,000 people, and luckily there was no danger, there was no violence. Nobody was hurt, but the tensions were so high, and there were a couple of close calls, and so I think we got to put things in place to be better prepared for next time. So that then brings in the introduction of increased surveillance, increased police presence, increased military presence, potentially, all under the premise of these rising tensions, these increasing tensions at the very least, okay? That's assuming that these protests are peaceful, nobody is planted in there, nothing bad happens. They can still say, well, the tensions are increasing, so we better be prepared for next time, just in case. Like, our government doesn't give a fuck about preventative measures usually. They always come in after the crime and then focus more on punishing than they do actually focusing on the source of our problems and preventing. But in this one instance, they will totally resort to and rest on that premise of we need to prevent things from escalating in the future. And how are they going to do that? Like I said, they're going to diminish your rights, your liberties, your freedoms even more. They're going to increase surveillance, police presence, military presence. Okay? To me, the thing we need to do that's clear to me is like, it isn't protesting. It isn't physically banded together as a big fuck you to the system. Because to me, this approach from a strategic point of view, in terms of the actual outcome it's going to achieve, is the same as if, let's say, we lived in an orphanage, alright? And we had overseers. Or let's say we're just a big group of children and the government are our parents. They're our parents. Do you really think that a group of children banding together and chucking a tantrum, effectively, chucking a tantrum at the parents, making their demands, we don't accept this, we want this, we won't accept this, and just shouting this, do you think that's going to make the parents or the overseers actually be like, oh shit, yeah, these children, they're chucking quite a tantrum, they seem pretty displeased with things, maybe we should yield to the children and play ball their way and listen to their demands? No! If you had a household of children speaking up to parents like that, they're just going to fucking send you to the corner. They're going to sin bin you. They're going to punish you. They might revoke your privileges. Okay? Because we can't beat them on this level. We can't beat them on a physical level. So physically banding together, even if we have the numbers, people, even all the people combined, every man, woman, and child combined, they've got the technology. They've got the weapons. They've got the strategic know and the ability to fuck you up. And it doesn't matter how big you are and the masses of people that compose this body moving against these forces, they've got the technology. So there's no point fighting them on a physical level when it's not even a battle you can win. When they have already physically dominated you and all you got to do is just literally push against that barrier to find that out. To feel that effect of what happens when you enter a fight with a toothpick and they've got a 10-foot pole. Then you'll find out why it's so futile to enter on a physical level. So I don't think this war, if there is a war or a social reform, I don't think we need to go about achieving this on a physical level. I think that's playing into their game. I think that's what they want. I think that's what they're deliberately trying to incite in people, is unrest and anger, being very angry at the government and wanting to just rise up at the steps and just shout and chuck a tantrum. Because they know, as parents, they don't have to yield to the children. They're not going to change anything just because we're chucking a tantrum together. Okay? They're only going to justify revoking our privileges and punishing us even more, and increasing their systems of control to ensure it doesn't happen again, or at least it's more controlled next time. To me, a much better approach is not taking this to the physical level. It's not a fight we can win. Like, do you understand that? To me, it would make just as much sense to sign a petition online, because that's ultimately what we're trying to do. We're trying to express our interest, trying to express our convictions, our intentions, that we don't want these things going through. We disagree with how things are being handled around the world or in various states. We could send or sign 100 different petitions. We could share those petitions around to thousands of people and promote that message of get on board, sign this petition. We could do that much more effectively than we would if we instead use that time to physically go out there and chuck a tantrum just so that we can pat ourselves on the back and say, well, hey, I did something. At least I did something. And I get it. We want to do something, but it doesn't mean we should just do anything. Especially if it's going to end up leading to consequences that actually work against us and restrict our freedoms even more. It doesn't matter about your wholesome intention to fight for change if all you're going to do is encourage the opposition to give us more of the same. It doesn't matter about your intentions. It matters about the outcome, and I think we need to be a lot less egotistical, a lot less self-centered and naive about this. About thinking, yeah, we'll band together with our intention. We need to become more outcome-oriented. Not intention-oriented, outcome-oriented. Focusing on what we can do to actually achieve the outcome that we want. Because what matters more, people? What matters more? Genuine question. Does it matter more that we actually achieve these outcomes we want, these changes we want, that we slow down this fascist grip that is choking the life out of us? Or does it matter that you just feel that you've done something? That you can pat yourself on the back and feel that you've done something, even if that something didn't actually do anything that helped at all, but actually made things worse? What matters more, the outcome or you expressing your intention for yourself? And so you can look your peers in the eye and be like, yeah, we fought the fight, we tried, we gave them hell. What matters more? To me, I would take like a totally different approach. I'd take the approach of Gandhi in this, kind of like passive, what is it called? Passive revolution? Where you simply don't comply. Okay, you simply don't comply with any law, with any imposed force or obligation or demand that quite literally goes against what is righteous and what is fair and acceptable for you. For me, what that means is if somebody transgresses upon the natural law, and the natural law just simply dictates that you do not intentionally cause harm upon any other form of life, unless you are upholding this law and you're defending life from those who are seeking to break the law and attack and cause harm. That's the only exception, is defending from a place of divine masculine and not attacking out of a place of toxic masculine. That's my law. Do no harm unto others intentionally. If there is any law, if there's any demand, okay, even if there's a risk of punishment, incarceration, fines, if it's not in accordance with the natural law for me, and if it causes me to violate what I stand truly firmly in and is in alignment with my truth and the world that I wish to commit to, the world that I wish to represent, if I see something that's going to compromise that, I just will not comply. And they can do what they may with me. And that's a sacrifice I, as one pigment in this painting, am willing to make. Because there's more to this big picture than just me. There's more to we, and we including future generations on this planet, than me. I'm not that self-centered. Really. I think that's what we need to really focus on. It's like, if we just don't comply, and we're willing to pay that price, whatever it is, for the ultimate attainment of freedom and liberty for all future life on this planet, then how can the system thrive? How can it even fulfill its end game? If we, instead of even playing along at all, instead of even acknowledging it and playing with it, and you might be thinking now, like, well, what do you mean, like, don't comply? That's what people are doing when they protest. They're saying, fuck the law that says that we can't go out when it's not necessary to go out, like for shopping and that. Fuck the law when it says we can't stand, within 4 feet or 6 feet of each other. There's a difference between not complying with something and going about your life in as orderly fashion, as normal fashion as you usually would and can, given the way things are. I know that's a bit difficult. There's a difference between just doing what you would do and not complying to bullshit that has no grounds and it goes against your convictions and what you stand for and fight for, right? Difference between that and actually fighting. There's a difference between saying, I don't give power to this game, I'm not going to comply with it, I'm not even going to actively push against it, but simply not playing ball, simply dropping the ball, refusing to give power to it by not acknowledging it, and then just moving in accordance with what is right for you and living your life the best you can, And ultimately, like, this is what I mean, like, is a difference between the city being full of people because they're just refusing to comply to things that have no grounds, and people banding together, directly violating terms that have been set, which is only going to further increase our restrictions, surveillance, military and police presence, and removal of our liberties. You know what I mean? And it's like, it's like any machine. Any machine needs fuel, it needs oxygen, it needs some kind of life source to fuel it. Okay? If you do not give that life force to it, if you do not give it your time and your energy in any fashion, it will stop functioning. It will malfunction. Okay? We do have the numbers on our side, and instead of trying to use our numbers in this competition of might and physicality, which we can't win, if we acknowledge that we are the actual cogs and the levers and the buttons and the machine itself, we are the ones that give life to it, and we simply withdraw our presence from that and our involvement with that and our commitment to that, then there is no machine anymore. There is nothing that is cohesive enough that can move as one unified body enough because we've simply removed ourselves from it. So that's my stance on this. Like, instead of actively playing ball in their game, we need to reorient ourselves and redefine how we are going to play our game that we collectively and individually define that we wish to keep playing moving into this new world. And no two ways about it, ladies and gentlemen. We are in a new world now, and the end game is not here yet. How this new world is going to look, how it's going to affect future generations, it's all up in the air right now. There are those who have very much secured in their mind the outcome already. Those who have been planning this for decades, if not centuries. Okay? So it requires a certain level of tact from us on our part, a certain level of planning and awareness if we have any chance of counteracting this. And all I would do is use all that awareness, all that planning, all that tact that we have together, all this power that we have together in order to, like I said, redefine the game for ourselves, recreate society. We don't need permission. We don't even need to acknowledge these laws and then fight against these people who are ordained with this supreme, unquestionable authority to dictate the terms of our existence. Okay? All we need to do is step into our sovereignty, to be in alignment with what world we wish to represent, the values of that world, and move into that and no longer acknowledge the bully in the yard who's literally threatening to take away our lunch and to remove how much space we have in the playground to play, even our ability and allowance to play at all. Just don't acknowledge the bully in the yard. Band together with our friends. Alright? Hold our ground and just play together the way that we wish to play, regardless of these bozos with their self-ordained authority. By playing ball with them and opposing them, we are acknowledging them in the same way that if you had a child who starts an irrational argument with you and they're making irrational accusations about you and name-calling, if you start defending yourself when people do this to you, they start throwing these insane, bogus claims about you, and you feel like you've got to explain and defend yourself, you are, in essence, cementing and accepting that what they're saying has merit, that is validated enough for you to actually play ball with it and try to negotiate with it. But on the other hand, if you're just like, no, this is bullshit, I'm not going to play along with this, I'm not even going to acknowledge it, without even saying it, you just show that by walking away and not complying with something which makes no sense to you, it's just hazardous and toxic, and you don't want any part of it, then that is a lot more disempowering than validating a position by opposing that position. Does that make sense to you? Like, these people don't have the merit. Who gave them the merit? Did you give them the authority and the power to make these decisions for you that now you have to wrestle against? Because I certainly didn't. So I don't see why I should extend much energy at all. You know what I mean? Like, with all that said, like, if I am in this position of not complying, simply living my life the best I can, okay? And these people come and they seek to impose consequence upon me. Like, maybe I'll just go down and just accept that and be like, yep, I'm just the one pigment in a painting. I'm willing to make that sacrifice. And, you know, even with that resolve, even with that intention in mind of allowing that to happen, even if I suffer the worst fate imaginable as a result of me not playing ball, like the bully just like overpowers me and just does what he or she wants, there's only so many people that they can allow this to happen with. Because right now we haven't been substituted yet with, you know, whatever they might want to replace us with, like robotics or whatever down the line. I could see that potentially happening. But right now, humans are essential livestock, all right? You read? We are essential. And if we all stood in this position of, I'm only going to stand in my truth, in my values, in my commitment to, in my case, the natural law, do no harm. Do no harm, do not hinder, do not oppress, okay? Just come from a place of love, essentially, and not fear and you know, oppression. Yeah, if everyone stood in that and everyone started like copying the price, copying the punishment, getting incarcerated, getting fined, you know, how many people do you think that they would allow that to happen to before they start listening to our demands? Like, instead of us trying to fight them on their game and playing ball on their on their terms, and physically fighting someone who's far more superior than us, what if we just simply hijack the most valued possession and commodity that these people have, that they depend upon to even keep the system functioning in the first place? Which, for those that don't know, the most essential livestock is you. And it's me. And it's we, the people, are the essential livestock. If we simply say we refuse to comply, and you could just do whatever you may do to us as a result of that, but we're not going to play ball with this, because we do not play chess with the devil, okay? But we're just instead going to build a game that's based on light and love and goodness, okay? Like I said, I really doubt that they would risk, you know, punishing and incarcerating a very large majority of the global population. But that's the thing, we need a lot of people on board with this. But that, at least as a strategy and principle, seems a whole lot more effective in terms of the outcome it would provide, potentially, versus just a few people banding together and just doing something because they just want to take affirmative action, even though they're actually leading to confirming outcomes that work against us. I'm more about affirmative non-action. I'm more about affirmative non-compliance. Not giving power to these people's actions, to their demands. Just withdrawing from that which does not serve you, your family, your community, the world, okay, your country, the world. Withdrawing away from these forces that will undermine you regardless of how you try to oppose them or control them. And instead realize that our true power lies in the fact that they believe that they control us and they can manipulate us to take the bait when they dangle it. And that's what's happening today, ladies and gentlemen. That's what's happened with the whole Black Lives Matter and then the whole Floyd thing. It's just bait. Just baiting us, and they're manipulating us. I mean, they started the social engineering movement in 2020. We're now in 2020. So they've perfected this over 100 years, people. They know exactly, just like how to manipulate mice in a maze. They know how to move you into various quadrants whilst having you believe that you chose to be there. They understand this very well. And you've got to understand that they know more about this and how to manipulate you than you could possibly comprehend, and be aware of that you are being manipulated. Okay? So, even on that premise alone, I just disempower all of that, move out of that game, don't even take the bait, don't play ball on their court, and band together and realize that they rely on us falling for it, and they rely on us full stop. They rely on us as livestock, full stop. So hijack yourself. Don't try to hijack the government and oppress them in return and have your shout. Just withdraw quietly, like Gandhi. Fuck, even if the world said we're going to sit down and not eat and just starve ourselves until our demands are being met. I mean, that would probably be like one of the most effective strategies, but whether we have the courage and capacity to do it and commit to that is a whole nother question. Okay? But obviously, if we are going to achieve any kind of positive change, we need to be willing to commit to making some level of sacrifice. There's no gain without it. And the stakes are so high now, the forces against the people are so tremendous that it requires tremendous effort and resolve and sacrifice, if need be, in order to overturn the way this story is panning out, in order to end this whole fascist his story and create her story of love, her story of hope, her story of a collective vision, collective humanity, united, not under a new world order, globalized, economy, globalized education, globalized religion, globalized government, which is what they've already done, like 3 of those 4 things, and the 4th one is already fleshed out at least 60-70%, I feel. But not falling into that narrative that they're feigning, that they're literally trying to make you angry with your government, with the police, so that they can say, well, let's abolish government and let's do a one world government, because that's going to be way better. I wouldn't fall for that, But when I say collective effort and us uniting and creating this world and co-manifesting her story, a new version of history from a place of love and unity and collective vision, in a place of wisdom and knowledge, I mean exactly that. And it doesn't require governments. It doesn't require globalized education. It doesn't require even globalized religion, or even the term globalized at all. It's just about life, living, serving what serves them individually, collectively, communicating in commune, and cooperating in a way that is complementary. It's just about us working together. We've got all the means with technology now to do this. So that's my stance. No, I don't think this whole Freedom Day is as affirmative as people feel because they're taking action in this. I don't feel it's going to confirm the outcome of us having any more freedom. I think it's going to reduce our freedoms. I think every time this happens, when we take the bait and we play the game on their terms, and that they're achieving their socially engineered effect, I don't think it's going to help us attain any more freedom or rights, okay, or hope. Like I said, you have value to these people right now. You are the most precious livestock, and there's only so much of you that they are willing to sacrifice, and I would sit with that for a while and really ponder the power that you have within yourself, not in physically exerting and acting against something, but simply withdrawing, absolutely withdrawing from that which does not serve your vision of the world that you wish to contribute to. Actively withdrawing from that which seeks to oppress you, to put these terms into effect in the first place, these demands. I think there's a lot more power in non-activity, right now, and just acting from, like I said, a place of love, higher frequency communication, regardless of what the people on the TV say, regardless of what these guys in suits in Parliament are saying. It worked for Gandhi. Gandhi is remembered simply for that's the main thing we remember when we think of Gandhi. The whole passive resistance. Not the Viva la Resistance with RPGs and pickets and fighting force with force, but allowing that force that seeks to oppress us to enter into a vacuum where there are no longer souls, no longer, prey for them to parasitically work, like suck light, siphon life off effectively, and use to further embolden their systems and the machine ultimately. Just enter them into a vacuum, withdraw yourself, don't even acknowledge the power of their plays, the power of their demands. Don't even give it that level of validation. Turn the tables. Instead of being children, chucking a tantrum and expecting our parents to not sin bin us, but actually listen, flip the table and say, well, okay, I'm not going to acknowledge you because you're just a childish bully. And the things you demand have no reason. They go against what is right and true for me. So I therefore will not even acknowledge or give power to it. And I'm going to go over here now. And you can try to stop me. And I guarantee you, they can only stop so many of you before they actually would start listening to our demands. Or better yet, fuck even that. Fuck even them listening to our demands. How about we just take, like I said, take life by the reins and recreate a system ourselves without needing permission from our captors. Because that to me is a lot more affirmative of freedom. It's simply removing ourselves from a game that is purely composed of chains.